Hello, everyone. Hopefully, I set this up right and we are streaming live. I haven't gotten There we go. We are live. Faux show. Yay. Awesome. So, welcome, everyone, to another fun-filled, information-filled episode of Happy Hour with Fernway Collective. As usual, hey, I'm Randall, here to host and chat and generally have a blast. And I feel like I'm saying, like, with me as always is Deb Maroulis, who should need no introduction at this point.
At this point, they're like, oh God, not her again. Why, Randall? Find someone else.
No, Deb is wonderful and magical. So if you don't know Deb and you need a little bit of intro, Deb is our resident mythologist and YA author who is very fancy pants and right now is working on, is it a series? Is it fair to call it a series? Just like an overall vibe of young adult novels.
Yeah.
Let me see if I get this right, as kind of like modernized, updated retellings of classical myths for a specific young adult audience.
Yes, that's pretty close. Good job.
Okay. Anything you need to fix with that?
I would just say that I like to take sort of like what we're talking about tonight, taking the women in myth and telling their stories a little bit more badass than they got the first time around. So, yeah.
Love it. All right. So tonight is going to be probably, I would say, maybe like the heaviest happy hour that we've done. We're going to get really real tonight and a little raw. So if you are somebody who imbibes, I recommend grabbing your Fernway Collective cup. It's just a sticker. Let me know if you're interested in getting a sticker to make your cup fancy. Ooh, that's a little strong.
Oh.
So I would like to start us off with a content warning. Tonight we will be discussing themes and stories about sexual assault, rape, gaslighting, misogyny, and violence against women. So just so everybody's aware, that content is going to be discussed tonight by Deb and I. And I'll try to put up a little warning before we go into the specifics as well.
I think can I add that usually when we're talking about myth and that sort of thing, we talk about the feminine and the masculine, and we don't typically assign genders to the feminine and masculine. I think tonight is a little bit different. We do get a little bit more specific into the woman's experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. And I also want to kind of put a disclaimer. Tonight, we're going to be talking a lot about the woman's experience, like Deb said, and it's really difficult when discussing a lot of ancient mythology because so much of it revolves around that gender binary, even though there's a ton of it that doesn't. And so tonight we will be specifically discussing women and their role in society, kind of from ancient Greece until today. But we're also describing non-binary individuals as well. I would argue anyone who's not the standard male cisgender majority, even though they're global minority, right? There are more women on this earth and non-binary folks combined together than there are men. So, so Deb, would you like to start with Who the heck is Cassandra? Why do we care about her? What up with her?
Okay. So Cassandra is a daughter of Troy, right? She plays a role in the Iliad, as everyone is there trying to win back Helen for her cuckolded husband. And Cassandra was also a priestess at one of Apollo's temples. And, you know, as you do when you're a god, on occasion you drop by one of your temples and you're like, what up to your peeps? And he was dropping by one day and he saw Cassandra and his eyes was like, wow, like, you know, what is happening? Who is that hot mama? And he was like, how you doing? And she was like, I'm good, baby. How you doing? And he's like, you're kind of
So
hot.
many cultural references in just like that one little sentence.
I know.
I got like The Mask. I got old like Looney Tunes. I got Friends.
Friends. Okay, good. Yep. They're all there.
No, I got it. I got it.
Okay. I can only talk to you if you get my reference. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, she was talking to him and he was flirting and he was like, you know, I really like you. And she's like, that's cool. And he was like, yeah, how about I give you this gift? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, no, watch. And so he gives her this gift of clairvoyance. She can see what's going to happen, right? And as he does this, she gets a vision of him, and he is watching over a war against her people, against the people of Troy. And she sees that he is on the Greeks' side, not the people of Troy's side. And I know that sounds weird.
Let's clarify, at this point, right? There's not one United States of Greece as we think about it today.
Correct.
There were all sorts of different city-states. So Athenians considered them different culturally from Spartans, from Trojans.
All of it, yep. And by the way, I found out that my husband's grandfather was from Ithaca. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, dude, are you guys descendants of Odysseus? Like, dude. Anyway, that's beside the point. I got so excited when I found that out. I'm like, do more research. Okay, so anyway, so they're talking. She gets this gift and she sees Apollo totally betraying her and her people. And she's like, bruh, I don't want your gift. I don't want you. You suck. You are a traitor. You're a liar, and get out of my face. And he's like, I'm Apollo, the god. You can't talk to me that way. She's like, bet. And he's like, okay, well, I am taking away your gift. And Zeus is like, yo, bro, like you can't take anything away. You can only add more. And he's like, said a bad word. And then
time to get creative.
Yeah, he's like, let me see what to do. And this little sidekick was like, what if, sir, you made it so no one believed her? He's like, you know, what if I made it as if no one believed her? That's a fantastic idea, me. And the little guy at the side's, God dang it. And then he went and worked for King Henry VIII later. But anyway, that's another story. So he does. He gives her an additional gift. And he says, fine, if you don't want me, that's cool. You don't want my gift, that's cool. Here's another one. You're going to see everything that's ever going to happen to all the people you love, and no one is going to believe you. And so she goes home and she foresees all of the things. She sees when Helen comes, she sees the war, she sees the horse, the Trojan horse, right? She begs her people and begs and screams. And every time she tells them something, they're like, okay, you're funny. Go away. You're cute. Go. Okay. No, that's not what you mean. No, I'm sorry. You're mistaken. And every woman on the planet right now is just going, oh, okay, I get it. And I think we've all had a little bit of Cassandra's experience. And, you know, she saw this coming. It did happen. Eventually, she was taken by Agamemnon home, and she was forced to go meet with Clytemnestra. She saw everything that was about to happen, and she was like, okay. And she looked at Clytemnestra and she knew that she would never let her live. And she said, okay. And she just resigned herself, and that, you know, she knew everything that was going to happen to her, and it didn't matter at that point. By the time she got to Agamemnon's place, they were she would just laugh or scream, she would have the reactions herself, because what's the point in saying anything, right? Oh, you have period cramps? No, you don't. And so she would just scream instead of going through the whole thing, because she knew eventually where she would end up. And that's what she did until she died.
Which she also saw coming.
Yes, she did. And she was actually looking forward to it by the time it happened. At least in the 2 novels that I've read that use her as a character, which I think as a collective, when females write about her, that's sort of where they get to that inevitability. I will say that in preparation for today, I did watch a few YouTube videos on the retellings just to see what other stories were out there, see how people mixed it up. And every one that I saw told by a man was like, why wouldn't she want Apollo's gift? Why wouldn't she want Apollo? He was hot. And I feel like that's part of the problem too. I think we need to get into that discussion a little bit of why we doubt what women say they want or what they like. I've been told as recently as a month ago, say, gosh, I really like that. Oh, no, you don't. You don't like that. Why would you like that? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I don't know my own mind. So, and then I screech, and then no, I'm kidding. But
yeah. So basically, Cassandra was the first, right, victim of gaslighting that maybe we can say. And as women or non-male folks, most of us can relate to the story of Cassandra. And one thing I find really interesting is that you didn't mention her twin brother.
No, I did not.
So for those of you who don't know, Deb is currently working on a specific book about the sibling archetype, and specifically about twins, right?
Yep. In my book, they're
sister twins,
quote unquote Irish twins, but yeah, it's about twins and it's about sibling relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. So in some versions of this myth, her twin brother Helenus.
Either way.
He is also given the gift of prophecy. So in one version, Cassandra is given this gift by Apollo, almost like a promise, like Apollo's giving it to her because he thinks he's going to get some after giving it to her, right? Like the original, I bought you dinner, or I bought you a drink.
I was literally just going to say
where
that.
You at?
Right? Yeah.
Having these expectations. So in some versions, she explicitly promises to engage in some sort of sexual affair with him, even though she has committed herself to virginity for the rest of her life.
As a priestess.
So in some versions, she says, yeah, let me see this gift and I'll make it worth your while. And then he gives her the gift and then she takes it back. I like to think that that's a version told by men specifically. In other versions, she just it's just suggested that she wants to receive the gift and she will be grateful for it, right? By just existing as a woman who is attractive, who is made for the male gaze, and especially is like really unattainable because she has taken this vow of chastity, that simply in her existence as a beautiful woman, she would be willing to engage with Apollo. So he gives her this gift thinking just all these thoughts in his head and never actually getting any confirmation from her. But in a totally different version of the myth, Cassandra and her brother, her twin brother Helenus, are babies, and serpents come and lick out their earwax, maybe lick their inner ear to remove any boundary between them and the natural world so they can hear messages better, and they both get this gift of prophecy. And it's only once she spurs Apollo's advances that he curses her with nobody ever believing her.
And Apollo is a twin too, if you want to talk about that.
Yes, and Apollo's a twin. A lot of twin stuff. Yeah, Denise says I didn't know Cassandra was a twin. Denise is a twin as well. Denise and Dennis, both named for my fave Dionysus.
Nice.
Yes. So there are a lot of different layers, and this myth can take on a lot of different qualities depending on who's telling the story, right? Cassandra could be seen as somebody who's a temptress and who's making sexual promises that she can't deliver, kind of like a Rizzo figure, right? Like Rizzo from Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think
like who because of who she is kind of has this reputation where people expect things out of her, but that's not necessarily who she is as a person,
yeah,
and she's
yeah.
only looked at that way because of how she looks. So we could bring this into the modern age, like, this woman was asking for it because of the way she was dressed, because of the hour of the day she was out at, because of her activities, because she accepted a drink from me, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
um
I think
and
every
so
woman I know has a story, at least one, if not more. I can think of
mhm.
5 off the top of my head. Um, it's I think too, and there was an etymology. I sent you the video earlier about the name Cassandra, and it means like one who has power or one who got something over a man, or I mean, if something like that. I'm oversimplifying it, but basically, it's
Yeah,
power
so
over a man.
it comes from the ancient Greek, and the first part, um, kikosme.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, my Greek is non-existent. Means to excel or to shine, and aner means man, and so she's like
Excelling over a man.
excelling over a man. So it's really interesting in a lot of the versions where her twin brother also has the gift of prophecy. In some versions, she teaches him the gift of prophecy and does that kind of to help her people and help the Trojans, so somebody believes her prophecies. But the prophecies come from Hellenes; they don't come from her. It's not like he believes her and she's like, "Hey, this is the
Mm-hmm.
next prophecy. Go spread the word because people believe you because you have credibility." Um, it's straight up kind of mansplaining, right?
Oh no, yeah.
Oh,
Now, if
and
her
it's
name had only been like George Eliot or something, maybe she would have been more successful. But
maybe, maybe. And for those of you who don't know, George Eliot is a classic author who is a lady and wrote under the pen name George Eliot to ensure that she
was
had the
taken
credibility
seriously.
based on
Yeah.
her name. Yeah, and was taken seriously. And this is really interesting because this is something that I've struggled with throughout my life, being named
Mm,
Randall, is that people don't expect me when they hear my name. Um, they usually expect a man. And I know I talked about this in one of our other happy hours on our Pride panel, but I have been accused of being a female impersonator several times, even when I was a child. And obviously, being trans is nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about. But it definitely affected me that people didn't know who I was because of the gender of my name. Um, and this is really interesting to see Cassandra, for me personally, to see Cassandra have this issue where she has this twin brother who is taken seriously and who is accepted just because he is male. And he doesn't have to worry about his gift being poisoned because Apollo's not going to
mm-hmm.
be wanting to mess around with him.
And all the powerful goddesses chose virginity, so nobody was going to mess with them that way. That's a really interesting point about how that's just so convenient.
Mhm.
Doesn't it seem like it's just so convenient? Like the women, all the goddesses were like, "Yeah, sex is beneath us unless you're
Mhm.
Aphrodite," and then it's like, "What's up?" But
It's on.
yeah, because she is love. So interesting.
Yeah, that's really, really, really interesting. I so we are talking about, we forgot to like introduce it, Cassandra Speaks, this wonderful book by Elizabeth Lesser. And tonight was supposed to be our final discussion on this book, but it just doesn't feel like we have enough time to fully get into all of this. And so we're going to only be discussing up to about page 81 today. Is that right? Um, oh, nope, sorry, 102, part 1. And I think part 1 really, really deals with Cassandra the most. And then part 2, we're going to talk about next week, while also talking about the myth of Medusa, who was another virgin priestess who took a vow of chastity and was punished for her beauty. So come and join us next week to talk about that.
The Joseph Campbell Foundation, their Myth Blast that came out this morning, talks about approaching Athena or approaching wisdom and what Medusa has to do with that. And I think it was a fantastic read. It was short and very motivating. And I'm so using that exact article in every one of my classes this next semester.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll post it in advance of our Medusa talk next week.
Yeah.
So I recently learned that to Cassandra, like, is used as a verb because of this myth, or to be a Cassandra is someone who warns of impending disaster or prophesies doom, but it's usually unheeded. And then, of course, that like causes madness. And there are so many stories of women going mad because they are not believed, or they are put into situations that they don't want to be in, or right, we've got this like mad woman in the attic type trope. And Elizabeth Lesser in this book used a really great phrase called the wounding of disbelief. And that struck me really, really personally, because like last week, we talked about schema, and every time we learn something, we add another thread to our web or to our net that we're able to catch things. But every time we do something wrong or we're not believed, we also add a thread to our schema where it kind of like diminishes our light little by little, where we're taught not to do these things, and so we stop doing them. And some what's the word I want to use, alternative belief, anyway, some people believe that as children, we are born with this ability to commune with nature and to be able to prophesize or to communicate with the spirit world or whatever it is. Like, we are all born with our ears already licked out by the serpent. And as we grow and we add these threads to our schema, we lose those abilities because we're told that we're wrong, or we're imagining it, or we're making it up, or whatever it is. And we lose those abilities little by little.
That's the whole theme of the Polar Express, right?
I never saw it because the animation creeped me out and I refused to watch it.
Okay, read the book. Because, oh my God, it's such a good story.
It's so creepy.
It's Tom Hanks everywhere.
It's like bordering on the uncanny valley, though. Like, it's just too much for me.
Okay, just read the book. I'm going to send you the book. And it's great, though, because this kid, he doesn't believe, and then he gets, of course, taken up to the North Pole, right, where he learns the truth about Christmas, and he feels the true Christmas spirit for the first time. And then when he gets home, he wakes up and he feels like it's all a dream. And somewhere in the middle of it, someone mentions that only people who truly believe, like children, can hear the bells, of the sleigh. And so at the end, spoiler alert, there's a little present that was underneath the tree, and it's from Santa, because he had given him the Christmas bell, which was the most beautiful sound he'd heard. But then when he rang it, he and his sister could hear it, but his parents couldn't. And they were like, what a shame, it's broken.
I just got the chills.
Yeah,
oh, interesting. Because when we're talking about this, I'm thinking about Angela Lansbury and Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Sure, yeah.
You've reached the age of not believing, right? Where she...
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
if any
Mary
of you
Poppins.
are up to date on your, 1962 Disney movies.
That's how we roll.
It's a great one, right? We have this whole like mythos built up about the magic of childhood before you see the world as it actually is. But maybe children see the world as it actually is, and we're the ones who have been beaten down by the outside world.
Yeah, that schema thing totally makes sense, right? If you're ridiculed about doing something, or you have a passion, there's one particular student I'm thinking of who loved to dance. and just danced their heart out at every dance. And that person did not care if it looked good or he felt good, and it was amazing. And I just loved every ounce of him for that, because he was just out there doing his thing, did not care. And I hope he's still like that. I really do.
Yeah, we seem to have such a simplistic view of the world when we're young. And I remember reading about things or hearing about things about laws being passed or silliness happening. I don't want to get too political in this.
Sure.
And wondering like, wow, everybody knows that killing the rainforest is bad. So what are we doing? Right? And adults are just like, it's more complicated than that. But like, is it? Or have we just made it more complicated? That's a conversation for another day. But Cassandra, reading this book has brought up so many things for me, and especially things of when I was a child and really thinking about feminist issues and how I wasn't taken seriously as a girl, especially if somebody did take me seriously with the name Randall, like via email today, where people take me seriously, and then they meet me and it's a completely different situation. And I can really see that happening. So
should we talk about this early madness that they found in women back in ancient Greece and how they cured the madness all the way through modern medicine?
I would love to talk about that. Elizabeth Lusser specifically calls it Uterine Fury, which I think is my new band name.
Right.
Uterine Fury. Like, I can't think of anything better. And this was
I'm buying tickets to your first concert right now as we speak. Just here's my money.
We should rename this show Uterine Fury.
Yeah, I think we just get a really wide range of an audience, don't you?
So Uterine Fury was basic. Oh, that'd be a good wrestling name too.
Also, oh my gosh, the skating, roller derby.
Oh, roller derby.
Yeah, he's right there.
My roller derby name wasn't as cool. It was Pippi Longskates.
I know, but
Uterine Fury would have been better. Much better.
Awesome. Yeah.
But when I was in high school, I wrestled with a guy whose last name was Fury. And so super cool.
That would have been cool.
So anyway, Uterine Fury is another name for a wandering uterus that male physicians back in the day thought your uterus could just wander around your abdomen and cause trouble wherever it went.
It's got legs.
Yeah, is it running around? Is it floating around? I don't know what it's doing, but it's wandering.
It is.
And it shouldn't be, right? It's like a girl out past her curfew. And this was caused, content warning here, sexual assault. The cure for a wandering uterus or uterine fury was manual stimulation to achieve orgasm, but
That's not what they called it.
Right. Well, it wasn't just like, hey, go masturbate and see you in the morning, right? It was a doctor that would come in and manually get a woman off, a woman who was suffering from a wandering uterus.
Electromechanical medical instrument.
And so there were like, this is like when vibrators were invented as these like plug-in machines to cure wandering uteri or uterine fury. And it was...
I love that they called it hysterical paroxysm because they didn't know that women could have orgasms until the 60s, right? Masters and Johnson. Couple. Yeah.
But I'm also going to say that there are still a lot of people today that don't believe that female orgasm is a thing.
Oh, yeah. I saw a clip on something where a couple guys were talking about it, much in the same manner that you and I are speaking, and it was terrifying. But I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah, just because female orgasm isn't necessary to conceive doesn't mean that it's not there, right? Sex isn't just utilitarian. And for all of you folks that think it is, you are missing out on a lot, because like even dolphins have sex for pleasure, right? It's not
Mhm.
just for procreation.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to really
Yeah.
go into depth about erogenous zones and such.
Yeah,
But
and she also mentions that the American Psychiatric Association dropped the term female hysteria in 1950, but it was replaced with the more Freudian term, hysterical neurosis, and that wasn't dropped until 1980. And
so let's talk about the root of that word hysterical, though, for a minute,
yeah,
because we
okay,
still use the word hysteria or hysterical, right? My father
yep.
especially loves to use this word when I'm upset about something. And he asked me a couple weeks ago, he's like, you know, I feel like I want to use the word hysterical here, but I feel like that's probably going to be sexist and you're going to give me a lecture about it, because I don't think I would use the word hysterical to describe a man. And bless my dad, he's from Texas and
Well, there you
he's
go.
got a lot of unlearning to do that he's willing to do. But he is very sexist. Um, and even today, we were talking about the Olympics and Simone Biles. Is that how you pronounce her name? And I said,
Files, I think.
Biles, Simone Biles, and I said, "Oh yeah, you know they're changing the scoring and it's not fair." And she's like this incredible gymnast, and she's doing these incredible feats that like would hurt other people if they tried. And he's like, "Well, yeah, incredible for a girl." We just had that conversation today, so it's a little fresh. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, hysterical, the root word, it shares its root with another word that we still use in modern times, right? A hysterectomy.
Mm-hmm.
And the root means womb. And as a hysterectomy is a removal of the womb, hysterical or hysteria is madness that is caused from your womb, from your wandering uterus.
Mine's in Tennessee right now. It's on vacation.
Your uterus.
Yeah, chilling.
Okay, you're Gen X, you would know. Detachable penis. Do you remember that song?
No.
Oh
What
my
is
gosh, I'm sending you the link.
Oh,
Y'all, if
geez.
you've never heard Detachable Penis, it's a gem of a song about someone who wakes up. A guy wakes up after a party and looks down, and wouldn't you know it, his penis is gone. And he looks
Wait,
in the.
no, that's a different thing. I was thinking there's a stand-up comedy where a guy
Oh,
just like can remove them, gives it to his wife so he can go out with his boyfriend.
no, he like looks in the medicine cabinet. He's like, dang it, it's not there. It's not beside my bed where I left it. And the whole song just kind of chronicles his journey looking for his penis. And spoiler alert, he eventually finds it as one of the knickknacks spread out on a blanket by somebody selling wares like in Venice Beach.
All right, cool.
Typical. But yeah,
I've
you know,
never
if
heard of
my
that.
uterus could be wandering and I could send it out somewhere, that would that would be great. That would be
Yeah.
great. Like we talked about a couple weeks ago, right? Our uteri are inflicting the punishment that Eve earned for us as women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm I'm experiencing my monthly punishment right now, and it's a lot. And I'm gonna tell y'all, the other day I was at the roller rink with my 2-year-old. We were in the bathroom, and she's like announces to the whole place,
Of course she did.
Nice. Good job, mommy. Good job on your menstruation.
Nice. Thanks, friend.
She's great. And then, you know, obviously my knee-jerk reaction is to be embarrassed, but why am I going to be embarrassed about something that my body naturally does? Which is a great segue into why I look like this today. After reading part 1 of Cassandra Speaks and really thinking about showing up to do this live stream tonight, I was really thinking like, why do I do my hair? Why do I put on makeup? What are my motivations? And
Mm-hmm.
I read something recently that said every time I have an insecurity about something I want to change about myself, the first thing I think is who is going to profit from this insecurity? And once I think about that, it's gone. And I love that when thinking about diet culture and just the way that women's bodies are treated in mainstream media. But I'm usually afraid to go on camera with my hair in its natural state without wearing any makeup.
I love your hair
Um,
right now. I think it's
Thank you.
amazing. I do. I already told
It's
you
a
that.
little
So,
Medusa meets Cowardly Lion, but which there was a guy in high school who used to call me the Cowardly Lion because my hair looked like this. And
wow.
every time he would pass me in the halls, he would sing like, "If I were king of the forest." And it was rough for me. It was a little
Yeah,
rough.
I bet. Yeah.
Um, and I just, as I was getting ready for the live stream tonight and thinking about how much time it was going to take me to curl my hair and put on my makeup and then take my makeup off before bed and do all the things. And like, why? What am I
Mm-hmm.
afraid of? Of people seeing my hair the way it grows out of my head? Of people seeing my face as it exists? Of people experiencing my body the way
Mm-hmm.
that it exists in nature? Um, and that's been something I've been trying to like really challenge myself with. 2 years ago over the summer, I shaved my head like
Mm-hmm.
down to a one. And it was something I always wanted to do. And it, I mean, first world problems, champagne problems. It felt like a huge challenge to me to, because my hair, this is only like half of my hair. I have a whole undercut like up to here because my hair is so thick. And I've always hidden behind my hair. I've usually had pretty long hair. And on days where I'm not feeling myself, I could use it to like cover my arms in a photo or just kind of like hide behind this crown of femininity when I don't see myself as being very feminine. Um, and so it was a huge challenge for me to just shave it all off and just exist. And I got a lot of really bad feedback and a lot of really misogynistic feedback from people I haven't even spoken to in a long time. After seeing photos of me, they'd be like, "Oh, did you pull a Britney Spears?" Right? And Britney Spears, hello, let's talk about modern day Cassandra, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who had this huge mental breakdown because of the way society was treating her and because they weren't taking her seriously or understanding what she was saying or respecting her boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
People assumed that because I shaved my head, I was also having a mental breakdown. And not to say that having a mental breakdown is like a bad thing, but like, you know, don't dudes shave their head all the time in the summer because like it's hot
Mm-hmm.
and it's more comfortable? And it was simultaneously like so difficult for me to show my face in public and want to take pictures of myself without my hair, and then also like so empowering that I could roll out of bed, take a shower, and just be ready to go. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have all of this like mental energy focused on just this crap growing out of my
Yeah.
head. um
When my
and
daughter had
reading the
brain
story of Cassandra really really just
helped you.
reminded me of how, as women, oftentimes we are existing for the male gaze. And the minute we do something for ourselves, it is seen as like some big challenge to or like rebellion against our femininity or who we're supposed to be. And I even had people tell me like, "Oh, you felt comfortable doing that because you're married now, right? So you don't have to like worry about what people think of you." Or like,
Wow.
it would be okay if you were sick or something, but like you're not, so why would you do that?
When my daughter had her brain surgery, she was 13, eighth grade, tough year, regardless. And
Regardless.
regardless, um, they wanted to just shave the parts that the scar would affect because they cut her head open, like it looked like a big question mark like this, and it came down to her ear, and they just wanted to shave that. And I said, I think you should shave the whole thing. And her hair was pretty long, and the doctor was like, shave her whole head, and I was like, yeah. And my daughter was very nervous about it. We had gone out in anticipation of this and got her a wig so she would feel comfortable. And after, it took a while for her to be able to go out in public. A couple months at least. She woke up from the surgery partially paralyzed and had to
Oop,
go.
hold on a second. You cut out
Yeah.
a little bit. After the surgery, she was partially paralyzed.
Yes. And just for just on one side, and she had to have a lot of physical therapy to kind of overcome that. But once she was able to be mobile enough to get around, we started leaving the house. And it was around Christmas time, and her hair had grown out just enough to like be a shadow at that point. And of course, her big scar, was showing. And people would come up to her all the time and say, "You're so brave to shave your head. It looks so good on you." And it did. She rocked it. Like, she looked so good with her
I've
head
seen pictures
shaved.
of her. She looked amazing. I mean,
Right?
she always looks amazing.
I
You
know,
always
it's
look
gross.
amazing.
Yes. Is she on? Is she saying hi, Meg?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But she
But
does
yeah,
always look amazing.
she always look amazing. It's stupid and rude. But
Youth wasted on the young.
Yes, exactly. But she, she got, finally, it gave her confidence that people would say that to her, and she never did wear her wig in public. But the fact that they would walk up and say, "You're so brave. I wish I could do that. I wish I could have, the brevity to do that," kind of thing. It's like, that's gross, dude. But yeah.
It is gross. Thank you for saying that. Because you remember, maybe I wore a wig to our graduation for our master's degree, because that was right after I had shaved my head.
Right?
It was a purple wig.
It wasn't like totally like normal.
It wasn't off brand, but
no. But what is considered normal, I should say. It's not normal.
Yeah. And I felt uncomfortable wearing that cap and walking across the stage and thinking, I'm going to have these pictures for the rest of my life. I should look a kind of way in them, which is ridiculous. And thinking about like, okay, so, I'm a little overweight. If, we're using these ridiculous, stupid terms that the diet industry has sold us. And I love going to yoga. And pre-COVID, I would go to hot yoga like 3-4 times a week, usually. It's good for my bones. It's just good for my soul. And I would practice hot yoga in like yoga pants or shorts and like a sports bra. And there were regularly people who came up to me and said, "Wow, you're so brave for practicing in just a sports bra without your shirt. Like, I wish I could be as brave as you."
Wow.
I wish I could do that. And I get that they meant it as a compliment because they lacked the self-confidence to do that. But I'll tell you a secret. I don't have the freaking self-confidence. I just shut my eyes and pretend that my body doesn't exist. I don't look in the mirror while I'm doing it because I am trying to prioritize being comfortable over being acceptable for the male gaze, as you could say. And let me clarify, when we're talking about the male gaze, like Gaze. I know some people hear it like Gays. And I know that the male gaze, Gays, are really supportive of, a wide range of body types. And I really appreciate that about the gay community. But the male gaze is the idea that women exist as an object of affection for men, and everything we do is a jumping off point from there. And the story of Cassandra really talks about that a lot, in that Cassandra was so beautiful, and because she was beautiful, she should have wanted to receive Apollo's advances, because that's where women's validation comes from, right? Is from being wanted by a man. And Anne left a really great comment. People think you don't care about yourself if you go without makeup or fixing your hair, right? And Elizabeth Lesser talks about this, and Cassandra Speaks as well. There's this really fine line, right, that we as women have to walk, because if you always do your hair and always wear makeup, then you're trying too hard. But if you don't do it at all, then you are lazy or don't care about yourself or frumpy or whatever it is. And I'll let y'all in on another secret. I don't shave my legs anymore, and I haven't probably in a year or two.
Been at least 2 years. Yes, I
shaved my head and stopped shaving my legs.
Familiar with Randall's leg hair. How are you?
But I get, people think that it's okay to comment on that to me. And I still, after years, still feel uncomfortable wearing shorts in public without knee socks, because I know I have hairy legs, and I'm not uncomfortable enough to shave them and conform, because it's like a
because
thing now.
Because
I'm me. I am me, and you are we, and you are me, and we are all together. Something
about ice cream. I don't know.
And so it's when people see me with unshaven legs, like people think it's okay to comment like about how that's gross, or maybe I don't take care of myself, or maybe I don't wear deodorant because I'm a dirty hippie. And I do wear deodorant. Unfortunately, I have to because I'm really sweaty since having a baby, and I just still have hot flashes all the time because I'm still nursing. But men aren't seen as gross or unclean or lazy or unhygienic because they don't shave their legs. And I know a common rebuttal of this is like, oh, well, we have to shave our faces. Well, maybe in some jobs, but you don't have to, right? There's no societal expectation. Like, beards are sexy, y'all. I love a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are in vogue right now, but beards are socially acceptable, and leg hair on women is not. And it's because of this idea of the male gaze, and it's because we're supposed to prioritize, as women, we're supposed to prioritize finding a mate and being a good example of femininity, like over everything else in our lives. And I've been told a lot of times,
you said the magic word,
right? Why are you going to grad school? Like, just find a husband.
Ouch.
That's always a good one.
That was my dad. He literally said that to me. Well, just about education in general. And my ex-husband, right? You don't need to go to school. It's a waste of money. You're a mom. Okay.
And y'all, you could be a parent and also be a valuable contributing member to society. You can do both. You can do all the things if you want.
Men do it.
Right? How many interviews with dads do they say, like, how do you find juggling a career and fatherhood? Right?
That's my favorite question to ask at parties. When I have to go to parties with my husband, I'll ask that to some of the men. Like, how do you balance all of this client work with having a family and keeping your wife happy? How do you do it? I'm so
what rude. A modern man.
I know. It's amazing.
Have it all.
Yes.
So I want to also talk about, like, we're talking about doing makeup and fixing our hair and all of these things.
Can I talk about the male gaze for a second?
Yeah. I just wanted to comment, like, it's a huge mental load on us. How many hours does it take to get ready and then do our, facial routine or whatever it is, brush out our hair for the night to make sure that it's not a huge issue the next morning? Like, so much of our time is dedicated to the presentation of ourselves. And, men have all of that extra time to, I don't know, win Nobel Prizes.
I think what's going to blow people's minds is that women also use the male gaze. We are not accustomed to looking at things through a female gaze. If you were to ask yourself, what is a female gaze? What is the collective female gaze? There isn't really an answer because we haven't decided on it.
And a lot of people like to think about that as like, oh, objectifying men, a fireman calendar or whatever, but that's not it.
The world.
Right.
And I have quite a few friends who are romance authors. They write adult romance books, and they come up, and even in YA, like, we have to come up with, we call them cinnamon rolls, right? The swoon-worthy boyfriend and the love interest, right? And they have to be sweet and caring and loving, and they have to say the right thing, and they have to know how to handle the girl, but they have to be tough when it's necessary, but not too tough that the girl can't stand up for herself, right? There's a lot of things that we have to think about when we're creating these characters. And if you think about all the male characters that have just gone off the charts, like Jamie from Outlander, like a lot of characters like that, they're all written by women. They're not written by men. And these male characters are not written in the male gaze. They're written from the female perception of the male gaze. And I really think there could be a lot of work done looking at what that means and what the female gaze might be. And Elizabeth Lesser goes into it a little bit, I think, when she says, if you show me what you pay attention to, I'll show you who you are. And she talks a lot about the war monuments, and I know we'll probably talk about that. But who decided that war was the cool thing that we should embolden and hold up and put in a place of honor? Where are the statues of the 911 responders? Or where are the statues of women who, had 13 children? Why is it, where is the huge statue the size of Lincoln of the educator of the year? Why don't we know any of the educators of the year's names? But we know generals. Show me who you are, or show me what you pay attention to, and I'll show you who you are. And that's such a fascinating subject for me. I think I would really, really like to go down that rabbit hole of what is the female gaze.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the book, the example that she used for that really stuck out to me was a woman who kept a would-be mass school shooter at bay
Yes.
through talking to him and being empathetic, and eventually disarmed him by listening to him, and saved, we don't even know how many children's lives that day, just because she spoke to him and embodied and demonstrated these feminine ideals that are traditionally seen as weak, of listening and of empathy and of connection. And
and I think just that, and she had plenty of opportunities to leave and escape, but she chose not to. She chose to stay with the gunman. And I think that brings into perspective this whole idea of defund the police, and how, it's such a, I just really think that's a poor name. It's a misnomer.
I agree.
Yeah, because we're not defunding the police. We are reallocating, or we want to, right? Reallocate funds to give to people like that woman, right? The social workers. And I think New York City spent the last month deploying social workers to crisis calls. And so many of them have ended peacefully, rather than send out the police, right?
Well, because that's the thing. The police aren't trained in mental health needs and de-escalation techniques, right? They're trained for one specific purpose, like to keep law and order, if that's what we want to call it. And I love that you bring that up, because I'm here open to page 102. And the quote I have marked is, "What if the urge to care for children and nature and each other had been chosen as the most important tasks of any society? What if care, as opposed to conquest, had been the marker of virility? What if resources were granted to the people most skilled at peacemaking, healing, creating, and opposed to those with brute strength and a penchant for violence?" I mean, that right there. And I feel like these are qualities that we admire and we hold up on a person-to-person level, right? We choose friends and to surround ourselves with people who are empathetic and who are caring and who are nurturing. But on a societal macro level, that's not what our society values, right? We still kind of have this like old Germanic warrior brute strength that we idealize, which is really, really conflicting mythologies in my opinion.
Very much so. It's a what's the word? Yeah, I mean, conflicting mythology is exactly right. We look at what we value on an individual level, like who are your friends, who do you want around you, someone to empathize with you, someone who understands you, who will listen to you. And that age-old question, if you've ever been in a relationship with a man and you have an issue or a problem that you just want to talk about, and they immediately go to solve it, right? And because and that's, they're really helping in their mind. They're
like they're trying to show love by solving a problem.
Let me solve this. And we get angry, right? We're like, I don't want you to try to solve it. Don't tell me what to do. I just want to talk about it. I need to process it. And a lot of people don't have the language around that. Like, you can't say that. My husband and I joke about it all the time now, because he'll say, and we're like, look, I know you're doing your cool man thing, and I appreciate it because you're trying to help me, and I love you for wanting to support me and fix this problem for me. But what I need from you is for you to hear me and not solve it. And that's a feminine and masculine thing too, because there are women out there who are probably, well, let me solve this for you. And that's because they've learned that masculine trait. But it is a masculine trait, right? It's not something that that comes naturally. Women are typically the listeners and the empathizers. But and we cry with each other. And that's not valued in society. People say, well, what's that going to solve? Well, it solves a lot, maybe not immediately, but it certainly forms a pretty kick-ass team for later on down the road.
Well, and I think what it does is, and this is just something I've recently learned the value of, because I really bought into the patriarchy and tried to be more masculine in so many areas of my life in order to gain respect and credibility. And I thought that being a strong woman meant being as masculine as possible, because that was the only way to gain credibility and to be taken seriously. And I only with you and our nice little group, like, I've really learned the value of having a good cry and being in touch with my feelings, and that that's not a weakness, even though it's perceived as such through our patriarchal lens. That's not weak. It's allowing space to process feelings, and then, like, that gives me the power to solve my problem myself. And it's kind of a damsel in distress thing when we're in these heteronormative relationships and the man is like, I don't care how you feel about it, let me just fix it for you, and then it's not going to be an issue anymore. And kind of like, when it comes to feelings, the only way out is through, right? And we can't just sidestep it. We can't pretend that it doesn't exist.
I'm laughing because that's a literal line in the last book I wrote. And then I quote that, the bear, like, can't go over it, can't go under.
I was just thinking that we sang that song at camp.
Right? That's such a great one.
Gotta swim it. Splash, 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 splash. Shout out to Mondo for doing that song the best.
When I was growing up, my mom worked for a politician, and my dad was the fire marshal of our county. And I went to a lot of events, and I apparently was good to look at, even as a child, which is weird. And I drew a lot of attention when I walk into a room, and my mom would always bring it up. Other people too. They were like, you walk into a room and everyone just kind of goes like this. And I would have strangers come up to me at dinners and be like, you're so good looking, you're so beautiful, you're so well mannered. It was like 9 or 10. And you're such a good girl, you're so well mannered, you know exactly which fork to use, you sit so quietly. And it really weighed on me a lot, and in school. And I would get attention from boys. There's certain traumatic events I can think of, even in like 7th and 8th grade, where things would happen, and it really was awful. And then I don't know if I was acting out trauma, or putting myself in a place I thought I deserved, but I went into modeling. I went into trying to act. I did dance. I did dance for me because I loved dance. Dance was my release, is where I got to be me. But when I did pageants and things, beauty pageants, like I did one like scholarship pageant, but the rest of them were like through the Miss America channels. And my very first one, they said, you're going to win. We don't have to go through the whole pageant thing. You can just take the prize money and then just start prepping for the state for Miss California. And I was like, that can't be. That's not right. Like, why? And it just...
What's this competition for? What's this pomp and circumstance for?
Yeah. And they were like, well, we can go through it if you want. And I was like, well, yeah, because I really didn't honestly believe what they were saying to me. And then, of course, I won. And I was like, okay. And then they were like, okay, but you won, but you need to lose 15 pounds. And I was 5'6". I weighed 120 pounds. So that would have put me at 105. You could already see bones, right? And I got to the Miss California pageant, and it was just the worst, most humiliating experience. We were put through like cattle. Again, from the very first day we got there, we saw a girl, and everybody was like, she's gonna win. She was already told. And she did win. The last day, the day of the actual competition that they filmed for television or whatever, I got up that morning, I did my hair and makeup, I didn't shave my legs, and we had to be out on stage in the swimsuit. And I didn't even redo my makeup or anything. I just touched up my lipstick before the actual pageant because I did not care. I did not care anymore. It was so over for me. And as I've gotten older, one person told me when I was 12, they're like, you're going to be heavy when you grow up, because I always had a smaller waist and bigger hips. And I started growing those things at the age of like 11, right? And they're like, you're going to be heavy. You're going to be big. And I always joke, I was like, that's what made me gain weight when I was an adult, because I gained weight. And someone asked me one time, and I said, it's kind of nice not to have everyone staring at me now. And I surprised myself when I said that out loud. And it took actually going through our program at school and learning about myth, learning about where these stories come from and how they're formed, how they form us, to be able to even admit that and to be okay with that, because we are taught so often, oh, you shouldn't have this extra skin or these extra pounds, or Grant, I'm not saying, as long as you feel good, as long as you are comfortable as far as health and that sort of thing, but otherwise, who cares?
Yeah, F everybody and their unrealistic body standards.
Yeah. And I am wearing red lipstick in solidarity for my girls tonight. And as you know, I haven't worn makeup in forever, but I've been putting it on for this just because I've been, just for my girls.
So. Yeah. And that's the thing I've been thinking about, like, where's that line? What do I do for myself? And what do I do to put on a mask for other people? Yeah. But because of our patriarchal upbringings, I can't separate the two. I feel like, yeah, I'm going to shave my legs and do my hair and do my makeup and put on this nice dress because it makes me feel good. But why does it make me feel good? Because it feels like now I'm worthy of affection or attention, right? Like it's this whole, it's all screwed up. And Elizabeth Lester talks about this on page 69. I didn't choose that on purpose. Maybe she did. I don't know. We regard the body as if it's a problem to be solved, as if there is something fundamentally wrong and it's up to us to bully ourselves into lovability. And because the motivation to care comes from the outside, from someone else's standards of acceptability, we cannot apply the first law of healing. As long as we want to trade in the bodies we have for the perfect girl on her pedestal, we will not recover our true beauty and sense of worth. As long as we attach our sense of power and value to the way we are seen from the outside, we keep the spell of Galatea alive. Now, we haven't really talked about Galatea.
That's such a gross story.
Pygmalion, it's so gross. Pygmalion. So those of you who are theater buffs, right, you'll know the name Pygmalion, My Fair Lady, or the more modern version. Is it even modern anymore? I don't know. Pretty Woman. Right? Where this woman is taken from a socially unacceptable thing and crafted by a man into someone who is worthy of a man's affection and attention through hair and makeup and proper lessons of what it means to be a lady. And the rain in Spain falls
mainly on the plain.
And can you walk or sit with a book on your head to have proper posture?
I think Julia Roberts actually did that.
I think so too. Only because I kind of have like a flat spot on my head.
Nice.
It's not because I have good posture. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. But reading this stuff, I mean, here I'm gonna give our content warning now. I'm going to start talking about sexual assault, especially in the context of Cassandra, right? She is the first woman to not be believed for what she is saying. And so many victims of sexual assault are not believed because they are seen as wanting attention. They are seen as maybe trying to fit some standard or ideal of what the world thinks they should be or some other BS like that. You are going to be hard pressed to find any woman on this planet, I would say. I mean, I know, right? Cultural bias, all of these things. At least in the Western world, I guess I'm comfortable saying that. Women are sexually harassed at such a high rate. I mean, I remember even being 13 years old. I was walking home from school and there was some guy following my friend and I, yelling at us, whistling at us. And we walked into a car dealership and one of the car salespeople came up, luckily a woman, and asked us what we needed help with. And we were 13. And I said, hey, we're not in the market for a car, but this guy's been following us and we wanted to act like we had somewhere to go. Right. Um, Almost every woman you speak to is going to have a story about being sexually abused.
Can I tell you that the massage therapist that they gave me for the pageant assaulted me? And I didn't tell anybody until he was arrested. This was some years later. I was so embarrassed because I internalized it as my fault because I was on his table, right?
Right.
And
And you
then
had the audacity to be barely clothed.
yeah, I was getting a massage, right? Then he's like, okay, you have to do it to me now. And he went to like position himself. So I took off, like I left because I didn't know what to do. And I didn't say anything because I was so embarrassed about it. And then one day we drove by the spot, and I would always have like this strange thing. And I was with my mom, and she's like, you know, that guy got arrested for assaulting someone. And I was like, oh, that doesn't surprise me. And I told her. She got mad at me. She was like, why didn't you say anything? And I was like, because of that, you're yelling at me right now. Like,
Because I'm effing Cassandra and nobody's going to believe me because I
yeah,
don't have the social currency
yeah,
to.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
17. Like, come on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
give me a break. Yeah. So, I mean, we all have these stories, right? She talks about Larry Nassar, the gymnastics doctor, right? Hundreds of girls.
I
And then
was
at the,
literally like just tears
yeah.
streaming down my
Oh,
face
yeah.
reading about this and the
And then,
language she used to describe it, which is anatomically accurate and somehow also very, 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 very triggering.
yeah.
So if you haven't read this yet, just be aware. She just uses anatomical terms like vagina and penetration and anus, and
But
it
the,
was fucking horrifying to me as a mother
oh,
of a
yeah.
young daughter.
And these
I,
girls were
I
told that they didn't know the difference between a medical procedure and sexual assault.
Mhm.
Um, I loved that the judge made him listen to all of these girls. And she was just on site coaching these girls, like giving or counseling. I shouldn't say coaching, counseling.
Mhm.
Like one was suicidal, right? And she was like, the world needs you. We need you here. Like, you know, just telling these girls. And his response at the end was, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Like, what? I just they are our modern Cassandras in very real terms. Some of these girls, are they still competing? Like, turn on the gymnastics Olympics right now. Am I going to see some of his victims?
Mhm.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and Jamie Danchter, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, gymnast and Olympic medalist said, quote, I was attacked on social media. People didn't believe me, even people I thought were my friends. They called me a liar, a whore, and even accused me of making all of this up just to get attention. Now, that's some BS right there. Because what person wants attention for this, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's less than 2% of accusations of sexual allegations and rape are proven to be false.
Yeah.
Oh, Denise said, yeah, the judge was great in that case. Yeah. Reading about this case, this is something that I wasn't aware of before reading this book, and reading about how the judge handled that and said, I'm not going to bother to specifically find the quote that Elizabeth Lesser says, but she said something about how the judge said, like, you took years of pleasure at the expense of these women. The least you could do is like sit your ass down and listen to their stories.
Mhm.
And now I'm getting really riled up about it. But this was really hard for me to read. And talking about the male gaze and how we have to be feminine and all of these things. Like I said, I was really masculine when I was younger. And in high school, like this switch kind of flipped where I felt like, holy crap, like I need to be feminine or nobody's going to want anything to do with me.
Mm.
And I remember one year, maybe my sophomore year, I asked like 7 different guys to the Sadie Hawkins dance and everybody said no.
Mm.
Because I was on the wrestling team and I played hockey and I was scary and people were intimidated by me. And I'm like, what's scary about me? I'm just like living my life and I really like doing these things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the pendulum really swung when I was in high school, where I felt the need to do my hair every day, always wear makeup, like dress really feminine. And when I was 15, my friend and I went out to the beach with our really heavy eyeliner and like acting like we were older and fancy. We had this whole story about how we went to college at UC Santa Barbara. And she's like, okay, I went there once and like these are the names of the streets and this is where we should say we live. And like this is like our whole story. So of course we like met these guys. We were 15. These guys were 26 and 27. Oh my gosh. They invited us out later that night. So we like got all dolled up and went out with them later. Somebody put something in my Smirnoff Ice, which to this day I cannot drink. And I was raped. And I don't know his name. I don't know where to find him. And I 100,000% thought it was my fault because I chose to drink, because I chose to say that I was 19 instead of 15, because I chose to be at this apartment and separated from my friend. Right. And it wasn't until maybe 5 years later that I realized, oh, one Smirnoff Ice shouldn't have made my head roll back and forth and make me lose the ability to say no, even though I was screaming it in my mind. Right. And reading this book was just so powerful for me and triggering, but kind of in a good, like cathartic way. Because even though intellectually I know that this wasn't my fault, I know that nobody who gets sexually assaulted like holds the blame. It's just incredible to see how, I don't know, just kind of like get that validation, right?
Well, I think you can take it further. I don't mean this to be a plug for my book, but I wrote it from a place of my own trauma. My first book is, the main character is at a party and she's a little tipsy and she goes upstairs with the boy she's totally, in love with, and he rapes her. But it's not like he didn't jump her in a dark alley and like take her by force. It was, they were, making out and doing stuff, and then she was like, I don't think we should. And then it was the emotional manipulation, right? Oh, you can't leave me like this. This isn't fair. I love you. You would if you loved me. All of that emotional manipulation. And so she just gives up, right? And then in that moment, she just goes inside of herself. She is not even there, right? And it's because we've all had that experience. Not we, I shouldn't say we all, but so many women have had that experience.
And men too, and non-binary folks, right?
Absolutely.
Rape is rape regardless of the gender of the...
And some men, right? Some men have had, especially this type of emotional manipulation rape. I think for men, that makes people like, oh, you're so strong. Why wouldn't you fight them off? That's ridiculous. Which that is ridiculous. Like,
or you wouldn't be able to get it up unless you wanted it.
Right. Yeah. Or my favorite thing,
which is false, in case anybody's not clear about that, right?
Yeah. Or if you got pregnant from being raped, that meant you want it. Like there's current senators who are using that argument right now against abortion.
Right. God wouldn't create a being unless...
Oh no, it's the woman's fault, right? Yeah. We don't need to go down that road, but there's a currency too for women in having sex, right? And being liked, especially when you're young and you can't separate that decision from, I have to do this to be liked. I have to be taken seriously. So I should be doing these things even if I don't want to. And there's so much of that needs to be unpacked and rethought out. And one of the things I love about TikTokers is watching all of these people educate their kids about their own power and what girls, there's a new patty cake game that you can play with your kids that show this whole different way of thinking, which is fantastic. I just love it. Yeah, I'll send you one if I can ever find one again. But
yeah, that sounds really good.
Because it needs to be completely rethought. It is not okay.
There's so much we need to unlearn. And I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before, like how can we break free of the cage we're in or the box that we're in if we don't know where to find the bars or where to find the edges, right? Only once we recognize the edges of this box can we fully like free ourselves and create a new story and a new narrative, right? And that's what Elizabeth Lesser is trying to do in Cassandra Speaks, is provide us, help us like bring us to the edges of this box that we're contained in and help us figure out a new story to replace this with.
Yes, absolutely. That's what part 2 is. It's the there's actual exercises in part 2 to do to help reframe the box.
Yeah. So for those of you who are reading along with us, please do your best to take a look at part 2 before next week, and we'll bring in the Medusa myth, which is one I'm really, really passionate about, and I think it works really well with part 2. So I also want to talk a little bit about like considering ourselves beautiful, and we talked a little bit about this with the male gaze. But in the Pygmalion story with Galatea, I feel like he's like the original sex doll. This is like a Frankenstein story where the gods animate her instead of science animating her. And it's interesting because she's like carved out of marble, and her name means she who is milk white, which makes me think of Snow White and this like perfect like pedestal of beauty. And of course, like this ties in now with white supremacy and these myths that we have that equate whiteness with beauty. And it made me okay. And Elizabeth Lesser talks about a Dove campaign who showed that only 4% of women around the world consider themselves beautiful. And something like 6 in 10 girls, shit, don't quote me on that. Lesser gives a specific statistic, but a significant number of girls stop themselves from living their lives because of the way that they perceive their bodies. Stop themselves from going swimming or from going out and doing activities. And I can say there are times where I've had nights where I feel so gross and ugly, and maybe it's just a bad hair day, or maybe I'm bloated or whatever it is, that I won't go out with my friends, or I won't go and do something that I was supposed to do. And it's like the intellectual in me like hates that that's the case, because I know how BS it is, but still like my heart and my emotions, like I can't do it. And it made me think of this old reality show from maybe like 2002, maybe, called The Swan. Do you remember it?
Yes.
It was a beauty pageant show.
I do.
Just like Extreme Makeover, which got changed to just Extreme Home Makeover. It was a beauty pageant show where these ugly ducklings would come in and they would get the full plastic surgery makeover and the makeup artist and extensions and, you know, whatever they wanted. And then they would have a beauty pageant of which one emerged victorious as the swan. And it documented their transformation from ugly duckling to swan. And it was horrifying.
It is horrifying.
Like, and this is a show that was on when I was in high school. Like, and this was seen as something good. Like, look at all these women like are brave enough to go and get plastic surgery and be who they see themselves to be inside. And I'm not trying to knock plastic surgery. If you feel like it'll make you a better version of yourself, right? Like, we have autonomy, we have free will, we can do whatever we want, and that's
and
fabulous.
Plastic surgery is necessary. Like,
sure.
For both my grandmother and my mom, their eyelids, I'm very much looking forward to this when it happens to me, because I look just like both of them. But their eyelids got to the point where it affected their vision, so they had to have their eyelids done. But also, I mean, if you want to have plastic surgery, fine, but don't do it to be a swan.
Right.
You know,
but that's the thing.
Like,
how do we separate who we are in the male gaze and placed on this pedestal versus who we want to be and what will make us happy? Because a lot of times what would make us happy is fitting this ideal of the male gaze that's put onto us. And this is something that I struggle with every day. Like I mentioned, like I am horrified watching myself in this video call right now looking like this. And I'm keep trying to just like get over it. And if I was out and about just living my life, I wouldn't even be thinking about this barely, right? But now in this new like COVID world, we're on Zoom and we have this opportunity to watch ourselves while we're speaking that we wouldn't really ever have in other situations.
Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon.
It's weird.
We're in a weird time. Tell you how worried I am. Now, this is weird for me. And if you know me at all in any way, shape, or form, you'll be like, no, say what? But I'm very worried about, I think she's the middle sister. Is it Khloe Kardashian?
I don't know their birth order, but
okay,
Khloe,
so
sure.
I think it's Khloe. I don't know her name. I think that's it. She was the one who was considered the big one.
And like really just because she was taller than the others, I'm gonna say.
Taller, yeah. And yeah, but she had all this work done and she doesn't even look like her old self anymore.
And she had a show called Revenge Body.
Yes.
When she broke up with her partner, and now she's gonna get a revenge body because because then that'll show him that she's gonna get super hot, right? That's like the epitome of the male gaze.
Yeah. But she's making her money on this. I used to be called the fat sister, and and now look at me.
And I drink this tea, and you'll look like me.
Yeah, and I really am worried about her. I just think that's like, are you okay?
Yeah, and Jamil Al-Jamil is doing great work combating the diet industry with this stuff. Detox tea isn't going to make you look like a Kardashian.
No, neither will the lip.
A great plastic surgeon, a great nutritionist, and a personal trainer.
Yes,
will.
And about 6 to 8 hours a day of all of that.
Right.
It's your full-time job.
Y'all, it's their full-time job to look good. Celebrities have that, like, they have the money.
Look like that, not necessarily look good.
You're right. Good call. Yeah. To fit this ideal.
There you go.
Right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of us, myself included, I'm speaking in this from personal experience, like, I definitely get down on myself because I'm like, gosh, I had a baby 2.5 years ago. I still don't fit into my old clothes. Like, what up with that? I'm lazy. I have all these like self-deprecating thoughts in my head because we see such a different, like, filtered example. And Anne asked a really great question. How do we get to accept ourselves? I think the way we accept ourselves is throwing the male gaze in the freaking garbage. And Elizabeth Lesser makes a really good point about being on a pedestal.
Yes. And that's the Galatea. She was literally on a pedestal, right? The milk white, perfect marble body that he falls in love with. He lays on the couch and like talks to her and sings to her. And
she's a statue of his own making, literally on a pedestal. And she's disgusting.
She doesn't say anything. So of course he loves her because he can project whatever he's thinking. And say, this is how she would,
right?
I love
like
our dog,
these, like,
right?
Yeah. And that's why I think like these couples on 90 Day Fiance, like, seem like they're going to make it because they don't know each other. They don't know each other's cultures, and they could project any fantasy they want onto this blank slate.
Absolutely.
And Lesser quotes Roxane Gay on page 61. Yes. People who are placed on a pedestal are expected to pose perfectly. Then they get knocked off when they fuck it up. I regularly fuck it up. Consider me already knocked off.
Yep. Love it.
And I think the way we accept ourselves, and I think it's kind of hard too, right? Because it's like with the defund the police movement, like there's no great solution right now. Like the way that we stop crime and the way that we start loving ourselves is starting at the beginning, where we're investing in programs for kids and we're creating a new narrative for our kids. And we'll talk about this more with part 2 with these exercises. It's hard for us as adults to unlearn all this shit that's been piled on us our entire lives.
Yes.
Like, who we're told who we're supposed to be. And we're told who we're supposed to be by men who are writing the stories, who are telling the stories, who are relegating us to side characters or love interests or damsels in distress, right?
Can we talk about
pixie dream girls? Like, we're not the protagonists, but we are the protagonists of our own story. And we have to take that look at our schema and break it down, like rip those freaking threads off piece by piece and remind ourselves, win the battle between your head and your heart. Like for me, when my heart says like, ugh, you're going to be judged going on camera like this, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Then my head says, what's the worst that can happen? Someone that you don't know talks some shit about you. Who cares? What does that have to do with my worth as a human being? Absolutely nothing. And I think we talked
our
about this
brains
last
are
week.
worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right? Literally.
Right. Literally.
Back to my student loans. But I think we talked about this last week where we said like this immediate, our first knee-jerk reaction is what society has conditioned us to think.
Yes.
And our second thought that comes after is what we really think. So we need to shut that voice up that our schema is screaming at us, like, you are not worthy as an individual unless you look a certain way. And I know that my grandma used to tell me that shit all the time.
Yes.
And as wonderful and as lovely as she was and as close as we were, it's bullshit. There are so many more things to me, like when she would call me out in front of our family, like, ooh, you know, I bought you this outfit a few months ago. Does it even fit you anymore because you've gained so much weight? And then I'm the bad guy for running off and crying in my room and not engaging with the family and putting on a nice face because, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I mean, she should know that she's gaining weight.
Yeah. Can we talk about this kind of feeds into your point, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
She talks about the greatest books, right? And how all of the books, most of the books that we use in classrooms are written by men. They talk about the great world and the worldview of how we see everything, right? And it is the male gaze that we're looking through. But then when we talk about books written by women, it's chick lit.
Right. It's
right?
niche.
Or it's for women. Yeah. It's not these great universal stories.
Right. And as we spoke about earlier, women and non-binary folks together, males are the minority. Males are the minority on this planet.
White males are the minority on this
planet.
White
males specifically are the minority on this planet. And so
but they're
thinking
clever.
that their canon, their literature, their thoughts, like I have this thought all the time that people like Freud and Jung, while sure they had great ideas, they could be like, you know, I was sitting in my bathtub the other day and I had this thought, and that describes the entirety of the universal experience of humanity. No, it doesn't. It describes the experience of an Austrian white man in his 40s at this specific time and place in history. This is not universal.
And, you know, one of the things I found in my research is because I'm writing on the siblings, right? And all Adler, Jung, and Freud all had brothers who died. They disregarded their sisters, Freud especially. But they had this weird thing. They never discussed that sibling relationship. And it's like, there's so much projection going on, and they turn it to the father and the mother instead of the sibling.
Well, the mother, he blamed the mother for everything, right? Thanks, Freud.
Yes. I know.
You quote me on that.
Half the time on this dissertation is trying to remove the sexism and the misogyny from my sources, because there aren't that many female sources. They're just, even the 2 books I found on the sibling archetype that are strictly about the sibling archetype are written by men.
Yep, and that's what we run up against, right? Females and non-white authors, they're seen as not credible, as less than, and it's
and YA.
So there's a huge restructuring and unpacking that needs to happen in academia.
And there's a whole movement going on in academia where we're trying to decolonize the classroom, right? Where we're taking out all of the, I mean, I'm not saying that those white male stories like The Great Gatsby or, you know, Fahrenheit 4, whatever, those are good stories, and we should look at them, but they're not the story of everyone.
As part of a whole, they're not everything.
No, exactly.
Right. And the canon we refer to as the dead white guys, right? Yes. Old dead white guys.
The canon.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
And I read a really great thing that somebody said that they were told that instead of saying people of color, say the global majority.
I told you that. Yeah, people of the global majority. I saw that on, I think, Instagram or something. Yeah. And I was just like,
and that like totally reframes your thinking. Instead of non-white or non-Western or non-male, like it's the global majority in all 3 of those instances.
I love that so much. I just do. I just think that's great. Maybe I was telling my son because he was just like, oh. I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. I know it's really good. And I know he's thinking about it because he dismisses it.
Yeah, right. Freaking white male, your son. All right.
Don't tell
I think
him.
this is a really great place to end. Thank you all for your comments and your attention to this matter. And we really look forward to seeing you next week when we talk about Medusa.
Yay, Medusa. I'm excited.
Yay!